The White House Deputy Chief of Staff recently said that the Trump administration is actively looking at suspending habeas corpus. Last week, you were asked about this, and I want to clarify your position because it's obviously really important to get this right. So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to...
Let me stop you, ma'am.
Senator Maggie Hassan asked a question that every public official should be able to answer without hesitation. What is habeas corpus? Now, that might sound like a complicated legal term, but it's actually one of the simplest, most fundamental ideas in any democracy. The government cannot just lock you up and throw away the key. It has to give a reason, publicly, transparently, and it has to let a judge review that reason. That's what habeas corpus is. It's the difference between a free country and a dictatorship. But when Governor Kristi Noem, serving as secretary in the Trump-aligned administration, was asked that question, she gave a disturbing answer. She said, and I quote, that habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to remove people from the country and suspend their rights. That's not just wrong, it's the exact opposite of what habeas corpus means. Habeas corpus limits the power of the president. It's there to protect individuals from government abuse, not to empower the government to take away rights. Senator Hassan immediately stopped her, calmly but firmly, and corrected her. She explained that habeas corpus is the legal safeguard that requires the government to justify any imprisonment. Without it, the government could arrest anyone, even citizens, without cause, without trial, and hold them indefinitely.
Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President Lincoln used it.
Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the Live Free or Die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let us be clear, though,
it has never been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress. So I have been asking executive branch nominees a simple question over the past few months. If the president orders them to break the law, I've been asking, will you follow the law or follow the order? I want to ask you a more specific question here. If the president tries to suspend habeas corpus and a federal court reverses the president's order, will you comply with the court order and uphold habeas corpus, or will you follow the president's directive?
We are following all federal court orders and are complying with that, as is the president, and every decision that I make as well.
That is obviously not true for anybody who reads the news. There are federal court orders right now, including returning somebody who was deported mistakenly. But to be clear, this is about a fundamental legal right that ensures that we live in a free society instead of a police state that would have a sham legal system like Russia or North Korea. So I'm glad that you have now committed to following court orders. I'm glad you believe in the basic freedom for Americans if ordered to do so by a court. And again, I want just to make clear that it is critically important that even if the president tries to suspend the right of people to know why they've been detained or imprisoned, if a federal court reverses that order, that you will follow that order. And I hope all members of the administration will, because it's obviously critical that some of the people, for instance, who've been deported by mistake, who didn't get due process, be returned in compliance with court orders. So now,
after that exchange, the conversation shifted to cybersecurity, AI scams, and foreign interference, all very modern threats. Senator Hassan connected those issues to the same principle: protection through accountability. She emphasized cooperation, information sharing, and transparency between federal, state, and private sectors, not secrecy or isolation. That's how you keep a democracy safe in the 21st century. Contrast that with Kristi Noem's responses, full of vague assurances and bureaucratic language but light on responsibility. Hassan's questions cut through that fog. Whether it's defending habeas corpus or protecting Americans from AI-driven scams, her message was the same: government must serve the people, not control them. And that's the essence of democratic leadership: the belief that power must always answer to the public, that justice requires clarity, and that freedom isn't maintained by slogans but by.
Let's move on to another issue. International criminal organizations target Americans with sophisticated cyber crime, including elaborate scams that robbed Americans of billions of dollars, with seniors in the United States losing $5 billion to scammers in 2024 alone. As artificial intelligence improves, so does the ability of criminals to deceive and defraud Americans. With this new technology, criminals can impersonate loved ones, develop advanced malware, or make more convincing phishing messages. How is DHS working to identify trends in illegal activity and ensure that new AI systems have safeguards in place to prevent their use in criminal activity?
Yes, we are working extensively through CISA, but in all of our agencies to make sure that we're going after these criminal, nefarious actors. I would say partnering with private industry is critically important so that we have the insight that we need to really understand the tactics that they use and the advancements in software. The AI ability that they have to adjust and to supersede some of our systems is incredible. And so investing in those systems is important, but also having the knowledge and bringing everybody to the table and breaking down the silos between our agencies and our intelligence agencies is important, so we all have the information that we need to get.
Well, and that gets me to one final point and question here, because Senator Peters began to ask about it. There's been recent reporting that indicates that the Chinese government installed remote access to Chinese-made power inverters in the U.S., raising concerns that the Chinese government could try to disable parts of our power grid. And you made a comment following up on Senator Peters' question about the importance of not only working with private industry on this issue, as you would also want to work on AI, but also on working with state and local governments on cybersecurity. And can you just talk to me a little bit about how DHS is partnering with state and local governments right now on cyber?
That's one of the core critical missions of CISA, is to help those state and local governments harden their systems. We're extremely vulnerable by our weakest link. And so when you have a small state that doesn't have the resources it needs to invest in these security operations, then they're vulnerable to attacks and hacking attempts, and they can access our systems. If they have a contract or a system that interfaces with the federal system, it makes us vulnerable as well. So we are responsible for 10 of the 16 critical infrastructures under the Department of Homeland Security, and making sure that China can't come in and shut down our electrical grid, our water systems, things that people rely on every day for their day-to-day lives is very important. So that's why we need these kind of partnerships, is to make sure that we're secure all the way down to our smallest actor that participates.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate working more with you on that. Thank you.